Good morning, Husker fans. Welcome back to the Husker Big Red YouTube channel. I'm Chris Peterson, and joining me as always is Danny Gillette. And we're back here on this Thursday morning, and we're going to talk some of the latest injury news with Nebraska football and how the Huskers are going to move on from the injury to Teddy Prochazka. Plus, we'll cover some of the other nuggets, news, and notes going on with fall camp, volleyball, Big Ten media days this week. So a lot going on. The season is getting very close. So before we get into it, though, please make sure if you haven't already, do us the huge favor, hit that subscribe button, hit the like button. Really helps us out, helps other Nebraska fans find our content. Make sure you guys are checking out HuskerBigRed.com. And Danny, how you doing this morning, man?
Good. I went to go see Green Day and the Smashing Pumpkins last night, so that was really cool. I've had a busy week, but so has Nebraska, so I'm excited to get into it. And unfortunately, some unfortunate news before we get to the good stuff, especially when you're talking about Teddy Prochazka.
Yeah, it was tough to hear that, but on Monday, after we recorded our episode, or actually this was on Tuesday, I think, was actually reported. Tuesday's press conference, Matt Rule came out and said that Teddy Prochazka, the expected starting left tackle for the Cornhuskers, has torn his ACL, which is another season-ending injury for the guy. So he tore his ACL against Michigan in 2021, had some shoulder injuries in 2022. Played the last 5 games in 2023, and when Teddy has been out there, I mean, he's looked like a future NFL draft pick. I think we can say that. I mean, he played really well against Michigan in 2021. Aiden Hutchinson didn't really do a whole lot against him, and at least while he was in the game. But now he's injured. I guess we should say Turner Corcoran did start with the number 1 offense at the Big Red preview, which again, that's just a walkthrough kind of practice type deal. So there was going to be a battle there between Teddy and Turner, but I do think that Prochazka was, the preferred starter, I guess, for Nebraska football. Now it is going to be Turner Corcoran unless one of these young guys can come beat him out. But what are your thoughts? I guess what was your initial reaction when Teddy went down, and what do you think about Turner Corcoran kind of holding down the fort going into the future of this season, blocking for the future of Nebraska football and Dylan Raiola?
Yeah, first, my condolences and well wishes to Teddy. I mean, he's just had some terrible injury luck, and no matter what you think of him as a player, you hate to see it happen to him, as a person. And truthfully, and I'm not saying this disparagingly, I think he should maybe think about retiring from football. I mean, he's young enough to where, he can bounce back quickly, but it just seems like injury after injury. And, I always have said that tight ends, for example, at 6'6", 250 pounds, for example, their body types aren't made to move like they do. And I think for Teddy, you have a 6'8", offensive lineman, who has to bend down and, puts a lot of wear and tear on his body due to the position. So, honestly, I would think maybe if I was Teddy about retiring, I mean, I know that might seem a little bit, extreme, but I just worry about his body for the future. You know what I mean? Like we're talking about life after football now.
Yeah, and if you look at what he's listed at 6'10". So right there, I mean, it's hard to get through a football season when you're 6'10" like that. I mean, it can make it even more difficult. Yeah. Probably makes you even more susceptible to injury like that, especially in your lower body and stuff. And big people. I mean, look, Greg Oden is a great example. I mean, he had constant problems just being a bigger person. I mean, you can look at even animals like dogs. Bigger dogs tend to pass away earlier than small. So it just seems like that body type can cause some other problems. Not that that's the sole reason that he got hurt. And
right.
But yeah, definitely, if he does decide to come back and play football, I definitely think he should. That should be something he should consider, because you don't want to be not having your faculties or being able to walk or we've seen a lot of things happen with football players. So I just wish Teddy the best in his recovery. But hopefully he can potentially come back or just get healthy, though. That's the main thing, is that
right. I want him to come back. I don't want him to, like, as much as I say I want him to retire. I just worry about that for injury. I would definitely want him to come back on the field if he's healthy and play. I just don't want him to overdo it to the point where he can't walk before 30. I mean, I kind of laugh, but it's more like a very scary realization.
Yeah, man, injuries are no joke, especially when you have numerous injuries. And I mean, so how many? This is what, 3 or 4 surgeries he's had now in his college career. So, tough for Teddy. Our thoughts and prayers are with you, man. Hopefully you get better. But yeah,
one of the last offensive linemen out of that Scott Frost group that I don't want to say was underwhelming, but has struggled during their time with the program.
For sure, but it's interesting in that some Scott Frost recruits are going to have to play a key role on this team. I wrote an article this morning, not long ago, about Thomas Fedoni, how I think he's going to have a big breakout season, and it's just interesting that he was one of the best recruits that Scott Frost got, and I think we'll finally kind of reap those rewards this year. But they're going to need Dylan Raiola to get some protection on the offensive line, and that has been a struggle the past few years. Turner Corcoran's played a lot of games at left tackle. He started a lot of games, but also, his health was kind of a question mark coming into fall camp. So, I mean, this is a guy who just got cleared. There's definitely some concern at left tackle about, not only Corcoran holding down the position, but him being able to stay healthy. And then, God forbid, if he gets hurt, where does Nebraska go from there?
I think it's an interesting question, and I think it should be brought up. I mean, he, like you said, he also has had his injury issues, and I think the hope is just that he'll be able to stay healthy. But, where Nebraska goes from there, I don't know if I can definitively answer that at this moment. I mean, I hope we never have to find out, but it definitely is a cause for concern. And I'm wondering if some of these younger linemen will have to step up this year and make an impact.
Yeah, Gunnar Gatula is a guy that's been mentioned, and Matt Rule mentioned him at the press conference as someone who could step into that role. And in my mind, there's Tyler Knack, I believe is how you pronounce it. Jacob Hood is another guy that's, been competing for jobs. Grant Bricks as well. I would not rule out him getting into the mix.
I've heard his name mentioned a lot over the course of camp, so that's a good sign.
Yeah, Grant Bricks, Gibson Pyle, and Preston Tamu have all been mentioned, in camp. And so if there's a situation where, Turner goes down, then it could be a Gunnar Gatula or a Grant Bricks. I mean, you got to play whoever you got to play. I mean, it's just kind of an interesting situation. You had Bryce Benhart, who was much maligned, a lot like Turner Corcoran was going into this season. And last year,
he played great last year.
Yeah, he played great. Now he's, kind of a team. When you turn on College Football 25, he's one of the star players on the team. It's kind of crazy. And last year, you would not have thought that. So it is possible, I do think, for Turner Corcoran, who actually last year I did think played better as well when he was healthy. He got hurt.
Just got to work on the false start penalties. Those used to drive me crazy. But other than that.
Plus, I've said this before. I still think Turner Corcoran can potentially play in the NFL, but I think he's got to play inside. And so I do think that this kind of hurts him a little bit too. And I know Nebraska was playing him at tackle, but I think that was a function of, the depth that they had, because they looked at their tackle group and they're like, okay, we got Bryce Benhart, who's been a reliable starter. Then we've got Teddy Prochazka, who started 7 games his entire career and has been injury prone. I mean, yes, if Teddy could have stayed healthy, he's a great option, but I think that's why Turner Corcoran was playing tackle, because they're like, we're one injury away from having a redshirt freshman starting games, and now that's where they are. They are one injury away now with Turner Corcoran stepping in and being that guy. But I think that's why at the start he wasn't getting those reps at guard, and it turns out that was a smart move.
And on the injury front too, Roger Gradney is out for the season with an injury, and Bryce Turner is also has an injury as well. So a little bit of unfortunate injury news as we continue camp, but I guess that's the nature of football, and I guess that's why you need to have a lot of depth. I just hate to hear it.
Yeah, I hate it. Injuries are my least favorite part of sports. I hate them. It seems like my Green Bay Packers are always getting cursed with injury, and so it's always the dog days of August. It's hot, and a lot of wear and tear on the bodies of these players too. So we'll see how it goes the next few weeks. But yeah, I'm always kind of watching the injury reports. Nothing catastrophic, but I do think the Gradney injury for him is catastrophic in the sense that he's missing the whole season. And I do think, again, you look at, it reminds me of the Maverick Noonan kind of injury last year where he felt like he had an opportunity to play right away. I do think that Roger Gradney, even though there's a lot of depth on defense, this dude is a stud, and it bums me out to see that development hindered with an injury like that. You just never know how guys are going to come back and respond.
Yeah, and even look at Thomas Fedoni's injury journey over the past, over his Nebraska career, really. He's worked so hard to get back on the field, and he finally did that last year, but it was a long road prior to that. So,
Yeah, and it took him, I mean, literally 2 years because he wasn't 2022 wasn't able to get back out there, and I would say at the first, 5, 6 games last year, he was still not quite 100%,
Yeah,
and
I
then
would agree with that. Yeah.
so you could see him finally starting to get back to himself, the past few games, and so that's why this year I'm all in on a huge breakout season for Thomas Fidone. I just think that with him being healthy and having not only being healthy, but like this year, I feel like he's going to have confidence in his body to cut and do all those things that that made him so great, that made him a top 40 recruit coming out of high school. I feel like he's going to have all those abilities, and just confident in that. He's not going to be like, oh, he's not going to have that doubt in the back of his mind as much as he probably did at the start of last year. When you're kind of playing and getting back into it, and then when you combine that with the fact that Nebraska's got a lot of receivers on the outside that defenses are going to have to pay attention to, especially deep, because if you aren't playing safeties deep, like Dylan Raiola and these guys are going to take shots. And that is the other fact, that you've got an elite quarterback that can actually be consistent and accurate and get Fidone the football. So he had 25 catches last year. I would not be surprised if he got 50 this year. Would not shock me at all.
He also had 4 touchdowns, which, I mean, to only 265 yards, that's not a huge number, but he was a red zone threat. So I wouldn't be surprised at all to see him get, 6 or 7 touchdowns this year. I mean, he truly is a threat in the red zone. And, you saw what he did with inconsistent quarterback play last year. Now both the line and quarterback position is a little bit more solidified. So I think he's also due to have a big year.
Yeah, and catch touchdowns from Heinrich Harburg, then hopefully, having Dylan Raiola there will boost that production. Not to disparage Heinrich at all.
Yeah.
I love Heinrich. I think that Heinrich is, a great leader and a great player, and I hope that they let him run the football this year.
Yeah, he was put in a tough spot last year too, which wasn't easy, but he made the most of it, and he always played hard, and he drove me crazy at times, much like any other Nebraska football quarterback has over the past 5 years. But he certainly tried and served his role.
Yeah, and he did. He won 5 games as a starter. That's still pretty wild, but he did have some great moments, and he is a very effective runner and a strong athlete. I do think if he does play quarterback this year, he'll play better under the guidance of Glenn Thomas. But hopefully,
I've heard that his throwing motion and his touch looks a little bit better, and so that's good, because the other part of it is Nebraska hasn't had a real quarterbacks coach in quite some time, and that's the other part of it too. I mean, Mario wasn't a real quarterbacks coach. I mean, you saw how Adrian Martinez regressed, and so now for the first time in many of in Harburg's Nebraska career, he has a guy in Glenn Thomas who knows how to develop quarterbacks, and I think that's part of it as well, because even in the spring game, you saw his improved throwing motion and a little bit more arm strength. So even in the few months he's been here, Glenn Thomas has made improvements to Harburg's game.
Yeah, and I wonder how much he'll get used, like in that Wildcat role, and that's the thing is, I remember when Tim Tebow played it with Chris Leak, and I thought that was like the best utilization of it. But he did throw the football sometimes. It was mostly a goal line thing, but they started throwing it more and more, and it's like that's Harburg can do that. He can throw the ball deep, but if he can complete even more of those shorter things, and I'm not saying I want Dylan Raiola off the field very often, right? But maybe a play or two here or there, and it could be, the entire defense is loading the box up, and you have some trick play like the option belly pass they threw last year. I think you could work some of those things in with Harburg, and that would allow him to help you with the run game, because Nebraska was like first or second in the Big Ten in rushing yards last year, and Heinrich Harburg was a huge reason for that.
Yeah, no, he was, and especially when you looked at some of the play calls, a lot of it were just designed runs by Harburg, and now
he just got lit up, man.
Yeah, that's the other part of it too. He got absolutely nailed on some of these runs.
Yeah, he was running like 20 and he's tall too, so he's kind of an upright runner. So he was just taking all those shots like right to the ribs, and like I honestly don't know how he kept getting back up. I mean, just the fact that he continued to get back up, knowing he's going to have like 5 or 6 guys drill him, and then not only that, but he was having people hit him, hold him up, and then try to swipe at the football, which caused some of the fumbles and stuff too. So it was a rough situation, but
no, he was tough. He was tough last year, and say what you want about him just in general as a quarterback, but he is tough as nails, and He did a great job, and I know the defense played a big part in it with the wins and blah, 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 but he did a good job with the situation he was put in.
I wanted to, so just a few other kind of fall camp nuggets. We were talking about Mecky Nelson before we came on the air, and he's been kind of creating some more buzz at the running back position. So that's a real positive to see, especially, we kind of talked up for a couple of years about, oh, Nebraska doesn't have these young running back recruits and blah, 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 blah. Well, now they've got, another guy in Mecky Nelson who, essentially can take that spot of a Q1 Lacey, essentially, who, could have been on this team if Nebraska had signed him. But now at least they've got Mecky Nelson to kind of fill that void. And, obviously he's probably not Kawan Lacey, but he's making some noise so far in fall camp. So I think that that's an impressive thing.
I mean, this is a guy that in high school ran for 1,670 yards as a junior with 22 touchdowns. And he rushed for more than 2,200 yards at Wilkes-Barre High School and also at St. Thomas More in Connecticut. So this is a talented running back. And E.J. Barthel really kind of used his connections to, add Nelson to the roster, recruit Nelson to the roster, and B, kind of find this diamond in the rough in Nelson. And it's really important that he continues to add solid depth to the running back room and his emergence. I was excited about him when he came here just for the depth purpose, but now I'm thinking he might be a little bit more than a depth running back. I mean, I think Nelson can really play.
I think he can too. I still think that Quentin Ives can play, but if Nebraska's running backs stay healthy, and by running backs I mean Gabe Urban and Ramir Johnson, like they're going to be loaded. That's going to be that 4-back running back room. I'm not saying that it's on par with, like Michigan or Ohio State in terms of like the star player, but depth 1 to 4. And then Dante Dowdell, he was a top 10 recruit at running back for a reason. So like the idea that he kind of has a breakout season this year, I don't think is crazy. I mean, I'm not saying like 1,200 yards, but emerging as the number 1 running back, or at least 1A or 1B, because I still like what Emmett Johnson brings to the table.
I really do too.
And that dude's put in the work. That's the thing, is like people always talk about like, are you willing to do the things that it takes to win? And I see a lot of guys on this Nebraska football team that are doing the things that it takes. They're putting in the work. They're doing all the little things. And I know we talk about all that, but you can really sense it with this program. And this is the first like true off season they've had under Matt Rule and this coaching staff. And I just think that we're in for a lot of good things this season.
And when you talk about the running backs, you can also substitute some of these guys out to get breathers or, a little bit of rest, and put a guy in and not have to worry about too much of a drop off, or at least, know that you're going to get productivity. And I think that's something we haven't had in the running back room in quite some time. There's always been, a top running back, but after that, we've always kind of wondered, okay, who's gonna, be the guy when Gabe Irvin goes down and this and that. And now I don't think we have to worry about that as much.
No, I don't think. Yeah, I agree. There's definitely more depth there, and it's been interesting, I guess, from my perspective, just to hear more about these younger players, and because I think it's a good thing whether they play a ton or not. It's good to see them kind of showing what they're capable of early, and I guess it's good to see guys that they kind of live up to their ranking. Grant Bricks, for instance. Preston Taumua. Gibson Pyle. I've heard good things about Isaiah McMorris at wide receiver, even though it's going to be hard for him to kind of get on the field this year.
Ja'Cory Barney.
Yeah, Ja'Cory Barney. Yeah, and that's one reason why, because Ja'Cory Barney just continually is making plays. Vincent, I keep hearing good things about Vincent Shavers on defense, and man, I just think that I think Miami or some of those Florida programs like next year are going to be like, how the hell did we let Ja'Cory Barney and Vincent Shavers get to Nebraska, and maybe Amari Sanders and Larry Tarver too?
Well, to be fair, Miami's wide receiver room is probably one of the best in the country, so I could see why they would want to swap out Barney. And same thing with the linebacker, although their linebacker group isn't as strong, but I think they replace Shavers with somebody better. I don't remember who, but either way, the fact that Nebraska was able to pick up Miami's leftovers, those are not bad leftovers. They're pretty solid players, and the fact that we were able to get, these talented guys from the state of Florida is also a positive sign too. I'm hoping that pipeline trend continues, even with Philip. I can't remember his last name, but the coach who used to be high school coach.
Philip Simpson.
Yeah, Phil Simpson. Even with him gone, I still think we can have a strong impact in the state of Florida for recruiting, which admittedly we had under Scott Frost, but it never came to fruition like we had hoped.
Yeah, the prospects just didn't quite live up to the hype when they got to campus, but these guys are, and so that's a really positive thing. In talking about pipelines, Nebraska hopefully is going to be building a stronger pipeline in the Kansas City, Missouri area. And in terms of Isaiah Mosey, we still haven't seen the flip happen yet, but Chad Simmons has come in and projected it. So there's been more, and I think Steve Wiltfong did too. I think that actually happened like a week ago, and it's just like we're all waiting for this to happen. But the two biggest experts from on3.com, who I would say I give Chad Simmons and Steve Wiltfong probably more weight than any recruiting experts, because they used to be at, Wiltfong was at 24/7, so he was the top guy there, and Simmons was the top guy at On3. Now they're both at On3. So I mean, when they make predictions, I take notice, and it seems just a matter of time until Isaiah Mosey, does make that flip, and that'll be good for Nebraska to start getting some more inroads in the Kansas City and St. Louis and Missouri area.
Well, you saw Nebraska kind of make those inroads a couple of years ago, Jaden Doss, for example. And Isaiah Mosey, I've said, is one of my favorite wide receivers. I've loved him since Nebraska started recruiting him last year. And, boy, I hope we land him, because then that's just another weapon for Dylan Raiola to throw to. And this wide receiver room, when you compare it from even, let's say, 2021, and you just look at the roster reshuffling and the depth at the position now, I mean, there's just so many more options, and there's a lot of talented options as well. So I'm excited to get it going.
And then I guess kind of the last thing we can wrap up with, Will Hawthorne, the 3-star linebacker. We talked about him on Monday. The expert projections kind of trending towards Iowa State. He's going to be announcing a commitment today. So you never know. I mean, Nebraska's pulled rabbits out of the hat before. They've had the rabbit pulled out of the hat on them. So you never say never in recruiting, but I would expect Will Hawthorne to choose Iowa State today. So that, again, will put the onus on Christian Jones, who I saw Tyson Terry posted a picture of Christian Jones yesterday. I'm not sure if they were together at that time or if it was from a visit or whatever, but essentially he said, the move, Christian Jones. So you've got one of the top in-state commitments in 2025 trying to get Christian Jones to commit. And now that Will Hawthorne is probably going to choose Iowa State, he's got that bullseye on from the Nebraska football staff from the recruiting perspective.
Yeah, the recruiting board has narrowed a little bit at linebacker, but I would expect Hawthorne to go to Iowa State too, which is, I wish him all the best. I'm not going to badmouth him. He would have been a good player, but I would have much rather had Christian Jones. And I think I still think we have a very good shot with Jones. I know his recruitment is a little bit slower than some, but I still have a good feeling about where Nebraska sits.
Yeah, and then you had, if you had Jones and Mosey, all of a sudden you've got a nice blue chip ratio there going. David Sanders is still out there on the 17th. It's sounding like Tennessee, but like I said, you never say never with recruiting, and you never say never with Matt Rule. But I wouldn't get my hopes too high for David Sanders. But still 9 days to go. A lot can happen in 9 days.
Yeah, maybe some more cash will come flowing in.
Yeah. Maybe Matt Davidson in the 1890 will get some things rolling.
Hey, you know what? I've crapped on Davidson plenty, but I'll give him credit where credit is due. They've opened up the pocketbook a little bit more, and they've ponied up. So maybe they can pony up one more time.
And they aren't out of it with Michael Terry either. I don't think Texas just took another receiver like 2 days ago, like another top-ranked receiver. So I mean, they're filling up. And I feel like it's, Oregon's still in the mix, but I don't know. I just, the things that he said about Nebraska, make me feel like there's part of him that wants to choose that. And if they've got the NIL deal there, I don't know. I almost feel like Nebraska has a better shot with Michael Terry than David Sanders.
I agree. And, I think if you add Michael Terry to this wide receiver room, I mean,
oh my God,
so much talent.
Lord. When they're talking about using him like a Deebo Samuel, oh my
I like
gosh.
That. Yeah, that would be insane. I mean, that would be crazy, and it would arguably be, one of the best recruits, if not the best recruit Nebraska has landed. I know Dylan Raiola, but I mean, just to think that we could be landing our, let's say, 1 and 2 best recruits over the course of less than a year. Oof, that's something special.
Yeah, I think that's what the rest of the Big Ten will be saying if we get the defensive coordinators, if we get Michael Terry, because that would be a nightmare. I mean, think about Michael Terry, Carter Nelson, Malachi Coleman, Jalen Lloyd. I mean, this is in the future. Michael Terry. I mean, all those got like 4 or 5 guys there, plus Raiola just playing point guard. How are you going to defend that? Like, literally, how are you going to defend that?
I smell national championship T-shirts coming off the pressures.
Yeah.
Although,
we're getting ahead of ourselves again.
I also smell national championship T-shirts once IGC caught the first touchdown pass against Northwestern from Casey Thompson. So you never know.
Dude, I was about to print them after the first Colorado game with Adrian Martinez when we were down like 10-0. He trucked a guy and ran like 60 yards for a touchdown. I was like, we found the next T-Magic, but not quite. He was close. If Adrian had played in a different era, he probably could have been T-Magic. You know what I mean?
And he signed with the New York Jets now, so I'm glad he found a home.
Hopefully he can stick behind my old boy Aaron Rodgers, and be developing. But
emphasis on old, because they also have Jordan Travis, which I don't know how Jordan will do, but
from Florida. Yeah, he'll be all right. He'll be okay,
but yeah, no, Aaron Rodgers is getting up there. I'm hoping he's on my fantasy team, so I'm hoping he does okay. I don't like the guy for not football reasons, but I hope that Adrian can make a name for himself with New York, because I'm glad he got another shot, because he did do well in the UFL, obviously MVP and stuff like that. So I'm just glad he's trying to make a name for himself and is making a name for himself away from Mario Verduzco. I think that's a bonus as well.
And preseason is going to be big for him. And those, when you're trying to make a roster, that 53-man roster, it's going to be important for him. So if you're an Adrian Martinez fan, check out the New York Jets preseason games, and that's starting like this weekend, man. I know the Packers got their first preseason game this weekend, so it's
Patriots have theirs tonight.
Football is back, you guys. Like, it's literally back. I know we've all been waiting for it. I know college football is like a few weeks away, but it's back. It's back, you guys. We're here.
I can't wait. I can't wait for tonight and see. Hopefully Drake May, some Jacoby Brissett. They want to play all the starters, so we'll see.
Yeah, as a Patriots fan, I think that they need to play Drake May as soon as possible. That's my thought on it. I don't see the point really of, like, what's the point of playing Jacoby Brissett? He's never going to win you anything. He's not. It's just like, to me, it's just a waste of time. Either throw Drake,
take time to develop a quarterback, unlike they did with Mac Jones, because Bill Belichick hamstrung the entire quarterback room with Cam Newton.
I mean, I agree with that, and I mean, I do think that. Yes, probably sitting for a few years helped Jordan Love, but at the same time, I don't know if, like, if he played right away, like, Jordan Love probably struggles, but I still think, like, 9 times out of 10, I think, like, the cream will rise to the top. Like, if Mac Jones was good enough, he would have found a way. That's kind of how I think about it.
Well, for May, I don't think it has to be a 2 to 3 year thing. I'm thinking like week 10 or 11 type thing, just so he can learn the playbook a little bit more, because this schedule is hard.
Yeah,
this schedule is so difficult. I was just looking at it the other day. I'm like, loss. Ooh, there's like a 2-game window where we can maybe win a couple, but this schedule is brutal again.
That's all right, man, because the Patriots, they got to reload. They really need to reload, especially on the offensive side. Yes. They need to, like, get another top 5 pick and, like, get some people who can actually score touchdowns, and maybe they'll have a chance to. Of course, I still think they should have took JJ, but we'll see how that works out.
Yeah, we will. No comment. I don't want to go make this podcast in like 20 minutes, but.
So, but yeah, I mean, he's been doing pretty well for the Vikings so far. So we'll see how it.
Well, he also has so many good weapons.
Yeah, that's true. That's very true.
Which is good for him, because the Patriots have nothing. So.
Yeah.
Well, actually, I know I shouldn't say that. They have like a couple good, like Baker and Polk, the rookies, and then Demario Douglas and Kendrick Bourne. So they do have some receivers, but nobody established like Justin Jefferson. So
and at any rate, now that you guys got some NFL updates for your last few minutes of this Nebraska podcast, maybe you got some help with your fantasy football squad, or maybe you're just as excited about football as we are. So hopefully you don't mind that. But we'll be back probably Monday, I guess, with another episode, unless anything kind of crazy happens here over the next few days. So enjoy this weekend, I guess. Enjoy the preseason football, and check out HuskerBigRed.com. Please hit subscribe, hit the like button, and as always, go Big Red.
Go Big Red.